right, y'all, we are back for yet another Digimon tier list, but this time we are going to be talking about the BT8 format, the new awakening format for the Digimon TCG. If you guys are like me, then you are participating in some of the upcoming online regionals or in-person regionals for the brand new 2022 World Championship season, and you're going to want to know what decks to expect to play against and maybe what decks you should consider when it comes to taking down these events. As always, when we do a tier list here on the channel, we have 4 different categories to rank decks. We have tier 1, these are the decks to beat. The most popular, the most powerful, super simple. Then we have tier 1.5. These decks are less powerful, less popular, but they could easily have a chance to take down a tournament or at the very least get top 16. Right beneath them, we have Rogue. Rogue is an interesting category where essentially the way that I think about it is, given the right circumstances, these decks can overperform, but they have a lot of interesting qualities that sort of make them underwhelming on the surface. And because of that, they're less popular and less played, but it doesn't mean that they're not worth paying attention to or at least trying out. And then finally, we have tier 2. You would be very shocked if these decks did well, and you might not expect anything from them given their power level compared to the other top performing decks. And because of all that, they probably are less popular as well. And if y'all are excited for this video, I want to see more like it in the future, be sure to smash that like button, subscribe, and click that bell for notifications so you know when my videos go live for you. And with all that being said, we have some decks to rank. Let's get into it. All right, starting off this tier list strong, we have the purple decks of the BT8 format. We have Lilithmon, or I'll call this like Purple Rush / Purple Toolbox. We have Mastemon, the new queen on the block. And we have an oldie but a goodie, the return of Bielstramon. So the first one I'm going to rank is Bielstramon herself. We saw some recent high performance out of this from the Carta Magical Regionals, and overall I would say this deck is actually really well positioned, even though it didn't get any new cards like specifically for its archetype in BT8. The only card you might include is a copy of like Mist Memory Boost or 2 to help you dig through trash and get extra memory. The really big selling point of Bielstramon has always been and still is its powerful late game. Once you get to a point where you have 2 memory Bielstramons being played every single turn, no deck can keep up with you. And this format has a lot of decks that like going to late game. They like stalling and trying to buy as much time as possible so that we can just run their opponent out of resources. Well, guess what? Thanks to Calling from Darkness and just the overall 3 Musketeers engine of Bielstramon, you're probably never gonna run them out of resources. Super cool deck, super fun deck. I like it, and I actually like its chances. I'm putting it in tier 1.5. Lilithmon is a bit of a different story. We saw a lot of people keep her alive in BT7 and do really well, and in BT8 we have interesting new inclusions like Creepymon or other various Digimon that can sort of add to the overall toolbox ability, I guess you could say, of Purple, but the same problem of Lilith and Purple in general will always remain. It's a really hard deck to use, and not a lot of people will choose to commit to this when there's something new and shiny and easy to play. So even though I love Lilith, I love Purple in general, I can't put this any higher than tier 2. I'm sure it can do really well in the right hands, but those hands aren't mine. Ooh, I almost forgot. There is actually one more purple deck on here that I forgot about, which is Cherubimon. Now, this is the only deck on this list that I put on here. Every other deck, someone either told me to put on or I've seen them perform pretty well in the community, but this is the personal choice for me, so I can kind of let y'all know about this deck. With the lowering of floodgates like Madoki Betamon or Memory Blockers, as well as Sayakomon, I actually think Cherubi really opens up and has access to a lot of cool plays, especially with the brand new Cherubimon as represented by this little symbol right here. Being able to stall for turns by doing minus security attack while also popping your Cherubimon effect is really strong and a cool way to guarantee game, even if your opponent is being aggressive. That being said, though, it is so untested, it's not even funny. I have no idea if it's actually good. It's just one of those pet projects that I have that I really want to talk about and show you all, because I think if something like Lilithmon can come back, or Bielstramon, why not Cherubi? And finally, we have the new queen on the block. We have Mastemon herself here in the US. These starters just came out. I know people in Canada don't have them yet, but hopefully by the time actual regionals roll around, you will be able to test with this with players from all over the world. That being said though, the big selling points of this deck are, again, its powerful late game. Once you stick a Mastemon, that girl is just going to give you more and more value every single turn, and it's crazy. The powerful removal, the powerful synergies with cards like Magna Angemon, as well as Lucemon Chaos Mode, is insane. This is probably the deck that gets hurt the most by the recent restriction of Eismon, because we no longer have access to powerful Chimeramon plays on top of what Mastemon can already do, and that's a real struggle for this deck. There's basically no way to actually build an aggro version of Mastemon that can keep up with things like Imperial or even X Antibody. And so the list that people have been preferring to play is more of a security control variant that has powerful security effects and ways to loop things like Chaos Mode or even Chaos Degrade. And because of that, because the list is so untested, and again, I don't really see it doing that well in events given how complicated it can be to play, I'm putting it at tier 1.5 sheerly for the fact that I know a ton of people are going to commit to playing this in big tournaments, and you should expect to play against it yourself. All right, now that we've gotten purple squared away, let's talk about the black decks. The main ones on here are, of course, my boy, Blackware Greymon, and my other boy, X Antibody. Starting out, this one's probably going to be super easy. X Antibody is an obvious tier 1. The inclusion of Oryumon, Ryudomon, Hisarumon, and Yuji just gives the deck so many tools to climb up, gain advantage, and go for crazy combos it didn't used to have. On top of that, we still have access to Sunaraizumon and tons of ways to gain plus security and just do big, gigantic security swings out of nowhere. Also, it's a pretty popular deck, so it's an obvious tier 1. Blackware Greymon, on the other hand, is an interesting one to talk about. If this was my tier list, it'd be the top of tier 1, no questions asked. But this is both my tier list as well as like an objective tier list of what I think is going to happen in bigger events, and here's what I think. I think people are going to play Blackware Greymon, but because starter decks are going to be available, people are going to play Imperial as well. And if I had to pick what the worst matchup is for Blackware Greymon, it would be Bielstermon, but also Imperial. Because of those bad matchups, as well as the combination that, like, Blackware Greymon, kind of like Mastemon, isn't a solved deck. No one can really figure out the best way to go about building it right now. I just see it in a confusing place, but it will still be played, and I do see it performing at least a little bit. So for me, it's a tier 1.5 inclusion. I'm going to put it just a little bit over Mastemon because it is a bit simpler of a deck. If anything, the only thing Blackware Greymon is victim of is being too fair of a deck. It really does have to catch back up or do its best to stay ahead. Otherwise, it's not really winning games. All right, moving on to the biggest chunk of this video, we have the blue decks. The Boogeyman from the original BT7 format, we have Blue Hybrid. The new Boogeyman for the BT8 format, we have Imperial. We have the People's Champion, I guess, in Armor Rush. We have two newbies, two unknowns, two rogue picks, spoiler alert, in Metal Garurumon DNA Digivolution, or Jogress, and Shakuamon. So right out the back, let's just go with the obvious, and then I'll get into the weeds here. Imperial's tier 1, Blue Hybrid's 1.5, and Magna / like Armor Rush, Armor Purge is tier 2. The one that I think hurts people the most is me putting Armor Rush in tier 2. The reasoning for this is there's going to be a deck on here that I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about, but it being really high in tier 1 makes Armor Rush a very bad deck. And on top of that, I feel like the way you use the Armor Rush deck in association with the Armor Purge mechanic is a bit underwhelming. In my opinion, the main selling point of the Armor Purge mechanic is the ability to sort of circumvent deletion effects, avoid removal. But the way it's used in the actual deck is as a way to get multi-attacks during your turn, sort of as a way to increase your aggression. And there are just better decks in this format like Red Hybrid or even Imperial that can increase their aggression without relying on a super specific mechanic. Because one of the best decks in the game, Yellow Hybrid, is focused on DP reduction instead of just hard deletion, it straight up counters your ability to dodge removal, and so it just is not the most appealing deck to take to a tournament given all of these factors. That being said, it can just steal games, especially if you're not prepared for it. The combination of Fire Rocket plus armor texture and Flame Dramon specifically is disgusting. So just watch out for it, but don't expect it to win any tournaments anytime soon. Blue Hybrid and Imperial, some would say, are the most hated decks in the past and current format. And you know what? They're probably right. I think there's a couple of other annoying decks in this format that maybe are worse than Imperial. But you can't deny these decks are consistent. These cards they have access to are strong and super simple. And if you want to have your best chance of winning a tournament, these are some easy decks to look to. And for people that don't have a lot of time to test, or people that just want to do well but don't want to like think outside of the box, just want to go root run and play the best games of Digimon they can, these decks are amazing choices. And Blue Hybrid, by the way, did get access to some new tools. I would say one of the coolest cards is the brand new Innocence Blizzard, effectively being 3 freezes from a single card is pretty cool. Also, I should say that I think Imperial will be more popular than X Antibody, and so it's ranked a little bit higher, just based on the price of the deck alone. All right, now that we've got the kings out of the way, let's talk about the fringe a little bit. We have Shakomon, basically a yellow-blue DNA Digivolve deck. I think we saw David Lago playing a version that played Yellow Hybrid as well as Paladin mode and a Zulongmon. I've seen versions that go like 4 Shako, 4 Chimera, and they just like max out on ways to gain memory, draw cards, and DP reduce. Actually crazy. And then we have DNA Digivolve or Jogress Metal Garurumon. This deck is focused on using Metal Garurumon sort of as an extender for different Digimon in play, kind of like Eismon combo or Savior Huckmon back in the day. So that way you can go into more powerful DNA Digivolve Digimon that could rush and get extra attacks against your opponent's board, / just give you value when they're played. Both of these decks are decks that I've never actually seen deck lists for, but I have seen gameplay of, and I think they're interesting. And if you can figure out a way to sort of crack the list or figure out all the big matchups you can expect, I could see this truly surprising people and taking down events. And that is the actual definition of the rogue category, so I'm just throwing them in there because it's the easiest thing for me to say. Alright, for some reason, whenever we do these tier list videos, we always save the yellow decks for last, so let's round off these last two. We have Red Hybrid / like, you can say, Ancient Garurumon OTK that we saw Chung Man popularize during the last Ultimate Cups, as well as I want to say Tyler get like top 8 with at the recent regional. And then we have Shivamon, the only green deck supported in BT8. I'm not going to beat around the bush here, folks. Shivamon is tier 2. The only thing it does is beat Yellow Hybrid, or have a shot at beating Yellow Hybrid. It sometimes can't do that because of the removal outside of option cards, i.e. Rapidmon. And even then, it's a bit of a stretch to say that it's going to be able to take down a tournament, but it is a deck that if you don't know what it's trying to do, it can just Romple Stomp you. There could be other more viable green decks like Green Hybrid, or heck, even Nidhoggmon is actually a very appealing card right now, given how wide some boards are. But Shivamon specifically, right now in BT8, I don't see it doing much, but I do see it being a lot of fun. So if you are a fan of green, definitely build it, definitely get your hands on these cards, because hey, you never know when being able to stop option card decks is going to be a good thing. And then Red Hybrid, this deck was kind of coming out of nowhere, you know, like I thought things like Crimson Blaze or some other red cards that came out in BT8 would be nice inclusions. You know, Hero seems like a really awesome tamer card for this deck, but man, oh man, is Red OTK still just really good, because like Bielstramon or like other decks in this format, going to the late game happens a lot more often than you might think. And when you can just deal 8 damage in a single attack and then cap it off with a Blitz Omni, you'd be surprised how many games you can just win, and that's really appealing. So in my opinion, this deck is still considered unknown, it's still considered niche, but it's really cool, and it can just surprise people. And like we saw earlier, when both of those things are added together, you get the rogue category, and I'm putting it at the top of rogue because I actually really do like it a lot. I'm a sucker for a really cool aggro deck, so I love throwing it on these tier lists whenever possible. We've talked about the rogue, we've talked about the fun, we've talked about the kings. Let's end off with some bangers. Two of the most interesting decks in this format, and two of the most annoying. We have Security Control, as represented by Fall Down Mode, and we have Yellow Hybrid Rapidmon, or just Rapidmon in general, represented by Rapidmon. I don't think it's any surprise to anyone out there that Rapidmon was like the single best card printed in BT8, and one of the best decks just to throw him into is a mono yellow version of Yellow Hybrid, or even a classic yellow purple version that plays purple tamers instead of purple eggs. Personally, I'm in love with this card. A lot of people hate seeing this card, but it is undoubtedly so powerful. Being able to instantly check an Imperial board as long as you have a Cody in play is insane. Being able to be an attacker in a control deck that can actually dodge other forms of removal is just weirdly disgusting, and it just can make way for even more interesting decks down the line when set 9 and set 10 come out, giving us more powerful yellow cards. This is an absolute star, going at the top of tier 1 in my opinion. I don't really view it as being a blanket stronger deck than Imperial or a blanket stronger deck than X Antibody, but man oh man, is the performance of this deck just far beyond what I expected, and I'm here to see it. Now, obviously, Security Control is an interesting thing to talk about. We haven't seen a lot of it doing really well, but I do think the bones are there. We have powerful recovery effects, powerful security effects, and new red and yellow combinations of cards like, again, Crimson Blaze, Wyvern's Breath, the classics. That being said, though, we already have a really powerful control deck in the form of Yellow Hybrid, so we don't see a lot of people choosing to go for Security Control, but it does exist. You know, the bones are there, and I'm totally positive that someone's going to give it a try, and if they go on a pretty good tournament run of just beating other decks that think they can kill them but they can't, I could totally see Security Control snagging a surprise victory, so I'm going to put it at the bottom of Rogue tier. And originally, when people were first theorizing that Security Control was going to be like actually a good deck, they did it under the assumption that hybrid decks weren't going to be as good in BT7, but as you can clearly see by this tier list, we have two hybrid decks that are going to be outrageously popular during this format, and that naturally hinders a Security Control deck that has no way to deal with tamers. So I feel like Rogue tier is fair enough given its likelihood of being able to actually take down a tournament. It can obviously do it, it can obviously catch people by surprise, but I don't see it happening with all likelihood. And yeah, there you guys go. I would say the only decks in an actual order are the ones at tier 1, you know, just based on like power rankings, but everything else is kind of like on par in category. These are the decks that I could see taking down an event if you brought them. These will have an easier time doing it than these, but they're all possible. Given the right circumstances, pilot, or just surprise factor, Rogue could easily take down an event. Once things like, you know, Metal Jogress and Shaco get more solved, get more representation, I could see them climbing or lowering depending. And then tier 2, I love these decks. They are doing some cool things, but unless the representation is there, I very much doubt they're going to be putting up any numbers that actually warrant being respected past just like running into them in the early rounds. Overall, BT8 format feels very diverse. It feels very balanced. I wouldn't say any deck is outrageously overpowered compared to others. Obviously, if you're playing a matchup where you have a bad matchup against a specific deck, that deck is overpowered, but in the grand scheme of things, I do feel like there's a ton of opportunities for player expression, as well as just overall deck building and meta gaming decisions that can lead to your overall victory. I love this format, love this list, and cannot wait to start playing some games. If y'all enjoyed, be sure to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and click that bell for notifications so you know when my videos go live for you. And if y'all are participating in any upcoming tournaments for the BT8 format, let me know what deck you are considering down below in the comments. But with all that being said, I've been your true champion, Steven. Please be sure to work hard, rest easy, and live well. And I will see you all next time. Peace.